The halls of Nexus Prime Station stretched for miles in every direction. Students from hundreds of different worlds walked through these corridors, their scales, fur, and skin, creating a rainbow of colors that most humans could never imagine. The station floated in neutral space, a place where no single government held power. It was the perfect location for the Galactic Academy, where the children of diplomats, warriors, and scholars came to learn. Professor Kelvin stood at the front of his classroom, his 4 eyes scanning the students before him. He was Arxian, a species known for their patience and wisdom. His silver skin reflected the soft lights of the room, and his long fingers moved gracefully as he gestured during his lectures. For 30 years, he had taught combat theory to the galaxy's best and brightest. He had seen students from warrior races and peaceful worlds alike. But today was different. Today, a human was joining his class. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Every head turned to look. Katie Morrison walked into the room with steady steps. She was young, maybe 20 Earth years old, with brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes were green, and they moved constantly, taking in every detail of the room. She wore the standard academy uniform, but something about the way she carried herself made the other students nervous. Professor Kelvin had read her file 3 times. Earth. Category 12. Deathworld. The classification alone was enough to make most species uncomfortable. Deathworlds were ranked by how hostile they were to life. A Category 1 world was a paradise. A Category 12 world was a nightmare. Earth had predators that could tear a person apart, diseases that killed in hours, weather that could level cities, and natural disasters that reshaped continents. Humans evolved in that hell. "Welcome, Katie Morrison," Professor Kelvin said, his voice calm and warm. "Please take a seat." Katie nodded and moved to an empty chair near the back. As she passed, students shifted away slightly. Not obviously, but enough that she noticed. She had seen that reaction before, fear disguised as caution. The classroom held about 40 students. Most were from advanced civilizations where war was a distant memory. The Velthians, with their crystalline bodies, came from a world where violence was solved through meditation. The Porthan, small and furry, had not fought a war in 500 years. And then there were the Kryn. Zektar sat in the front row, his massive frame making the chair look like a toy. The Kryn were warriors by nature. Their species had evolved on a harsh world, though only a Category 6. They valued strength and honor above all else. Zektar's carapace was deep blue, polished until it shone. His crest, a series of sharp ridges along his head, stood tall with pride. He had won every combat simulation in the class. No one had come close to beating him. Professor Kelvin continued his lecture. "Today we will discuss practical blade combat. While most modern conflicts are resolved without physical confrontation, understanding the fundamentals of close-quarters combat remains essential for diplomatic security personnel." He activated a holographic display. A 3-dimensional figure appeared holding a knife in various positions. The grip, the stance, the angle of approach, all of these elements determine success or failure in a blade confrontation. Zektar raised one of his forearms. "Professor, theory is useful, but warriors learn through action. Perhaps a demonstration would be more educational?" Several students murmured in agreement. Professor Kelvin considered this. Demonstrations were valuable, but they required volunteers who understood the risks. "Very well," the professor said. "Zektar, would you demonstrate proper stance and grip?" The Kryn warrior stood immediately. He reached into his belt and withdrew a ceremonial blade. It was beautiful, with a curved edge that caught the light. "This blade has been in my family for 6 generations. With it, I will show you the way of the Kryn warrior." He moved to the center of the room, his movements powerful and controlled. He took a stance, blade held high, his other arms positioned for balance and defense. This is the Guardian stance. From here, a warrior can attack or defend with equal efficiency. The students watched, some taking notes on their datapads. Professor Kelvin nodded approvingly. "Excellent form, Zektar. Notice how his center of gravity remains low. This provides stability while maintaining mobility." In the back of the room, Katie watched quietly. Her face showed no expression, but her eyes never left Zektar's movements. She saw the stance, analyzed it, found its weaknesses, not because she was trying to, but because she couldn't help it. It was instinct. "Does anyone have questions?" Professor Kelvin asked. Katie raised her hand. The room fell silent. It was the first time she had spoken in class. "Yes, Katie?" the professor said. She stood, her movements casual and relaxed. That's a good stance for ceremonies. But in a real fight, it leaves your right side exposed, and holding the blade that high cost you half a second when you strike. The silence deepened. Several students looked shocked. Zektar's crest flared, a sign of irritation among the Kryn. The human questions my form? Zektar said, his voice low and dangerous. Perhaps she should demonstrate what she believes is superior. Professor Kelvin raised a hand. Now let's remain civil. This is a classroom, not an arena. But Katie was already walking toward the center of the room. I'm not questioning your form. I'm questioning whether you've ever used it in real combat. Zektar's eyes narrowed. I have trained since I could walk. I have won every tournament in my age group. I have studied the blade arts of 20 different species. What have you done, human? Katie stopped a few feet away from him. She looked small compared to the massive Kryn warrior. I grew up. The other students didn't understand, but Professor Kelvin did. He had studied Earth extensively. He knew what growing up on that world meant. Every day was survival. Every moment was a test. Are you challenging me? Zektar asked. No, Katie said simply. I'm just saying that theory and practice are different things. You asked for a demonstration. I'm offering one. Professor Kelvin should have stopped it. He should have reminded them that this was a place of learning, not combat. But something made him hesitate. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was the knowledge that sometimes the best lessons came from unexpected places. Very well, he said slowly, but this will be a controlled demonstration. Safety protocols will be active. First sign of actual danger, and I end it immediately. Understood? Both Katie and Zektar nodded. The professor activated the containment field. A shimmering barrier surrounded the center of the room. It would prevent any weapons or strikes from reaching the other students. Inside the field, however, anything was possible. Zektar adjusted his grip on the blade. His stance shifted, becoming more aggressive. I will not hold back, human. When you are defeated, remember that you chose this. Katie didn't respond. She simply stood there, relaxed, her hands at her sides. She wasn't even in a fighting stance. To the other students, she looked completely unprepared. But Professor Kelvin saw something different. He saw the way her weight was distributed. He saw how her eyes never left Zektar's center mass. He saw the slight angle of her shoulders, ready to move in any direction. She wasn't unprepared. She was ready for anything. Begin, the professor said. Zektar moved first, as everyone expected. His lunge was textbook perfect, the kind of strike that would earn full marks in any exam. Fast controlled, aimed at a non-lethal target. He was still holding back, not wanting to actually hurt the human girl. Katie smiled. That smile made something cold run down Professor Kelvin's spine. It wasn't a friendly smile. It wasn't cruel either. It was the smile of someone who recognized a familiar situation. The smile of someone coming home. Then she moved. Later, when the professor reviewed the footage, he would watch it dozens of times. Even slowed down to 1/10 of normal speed, Katie's movements seemed to blur. She didn't step back or dodge to the side like a normal fighter. She moved forward into the strike, closing the distance before Zektar could react. Her hand came up, not to block but to redirect. She struck his wrist at a precise point, and even though Kryn physiology was different from humans, the principle was the same. Nerves sent pain signals. Muscles spasmed. The blade fell from his grip. She continued moving, using his own momentum against him. Her foot hooked behind his leg. Her shoulder drove into his center mass, and suddenly the massive Kryn warrior was falling. He hit the ground with a heavy thud, his breath leaving his lungs in a rush. Before he could recover, Katie had scooped up the fallen blade. She dropped to one knee, the point of the knife resting gently against the weak spot in Zektar's carapace, right where his primary respiratory organ was located. 3 seconds. That's how long it had taken. The classroom erupted in shocked chatter. Students stood from their chairs, crowding forward to see better. Professor Kelvin stared at the scene, his mind racing to process what he had just witnessed. Katie stood up smoothly. She reversed the blade, offering the handle to Zektar. Then she extended her other hand to help him to his feet. The Kryn warrior took both, his pride clearly wounded but his warrior's instinct recognizing skill when he saw it. On Earth, Katie said quietly, her voice carrying through the now silent room, we don't theorize about knife fights. We survive them. The cafeteria buzzed with conversation. Word of what happened in Professor Kelvin's class had spread through Nexus Prime like a solar flare. By the time Katie walked in for the evening meal, every student in the academy seemed to know her name. She grabbed a tray and moved through the food line, selecting items that her datapad marked as safe for human consumption. The academy did its best to accommodate all species, but sometimes the options were limited. She settled for something that looked vaguely like pasta and found an empty table near the observation window. The stars stretched out beyond the transparent wall, countless points of light in the infinite darkness. Katie ate slowly, trying to ignore the stares from other tables. She had hoped the academy would be different from Earth, a place where she could just be another student. But the incident in class had changed that. "May I sit?" Katie looked up. Zektar stood beside her table, holding a tray loaded with what appeared to be raw meat. His crest was lowered, a sign of respect among the Kryn. "It's a free station," Katie said. The massive warrior sat down, his chair creaking under his weight. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Zektar broke the silence. "You move like water," he said. "The Kryn fight like stone. Strong, unyielding, powerful. But you flow around obstacles. You use the enemy's strength as your own. I have never seen this technique." Katie set down her fork. "It's not really a technique. It's just how humans fight when we don't have the advantage of size or strength. All humans fight this way. Most of us learn something. Earth is dangerous, so parents teach their children to defend themselves. Some learn more than others." Zektar considered this as he ate. "On my world, warriors train in dedicated schools. We learn forms passed down through generations. It takes years to master. But you made it look easy." "It wasn't easy," Katie said quietly. "Nothing about growing up on Earth is easy." Before Zektar could respond, 3 more students approached the table. 2 were Velthian, their crystalline bodies reflecting the light in rainbow patterns. The third was Porthan, small and covered in soft brown fur. "Is it true?" one of the Velthians asked, their voice like wind chimes. "Did you really defeat Zektar in combat?" Katie sighed. "It was a classroom demonstration, not a real fight." "But you had a knife to his throat," the Porthan squeaked. "In 3 seconds. His respiratory organ, actually," Katie corrected. "And it was a controlled environment with safety protocols active." The students looked unconvinced. They stared at her with a mixture of fascination and fear. Katie had seen that look before, back on Earth, when she had visited one of the safer colony cities. The people there looked at her like she was some kind of predator. "What's it like?" the second Velthian asked. "Living on a Category 12 Deathworld?" Katie thought about how to answer. How do you explain to someone from a paradise world what it's like to grow up in constant danger? How do you describe checking your shoes for venomous spiders every morning? Or learning to identify poisonous plants before you can read? Or understanding that the beautiful beach could kill you with a single wave? "It's home," she finally said. "You adapt to what you know." The Porthan shuddered. "I read that Earth has predators that hunt humans." "Predators. On my world, the most dangerous animal is a herbivore that might accidentally step on you." "We have those too," Katie said with a slight smile. "Elephants, hippos, rhinos. The herbivores are sometimes more dangerous than the predators." This statement was met with shocked silence. Even Zektar's crest raised slightly in surprise. "How does your species survive?" one of the Velthians asked. "We're smart. We work together. We make tools. We adapt." Katie pushed her tray away. "Look, I know Earth sounds scary to you. It is scary, but it's also beautiful. Humans wouldn't be what we are without it." The conversation continued, with more students gradually joining the table. Katie found herself answering questions about Earth, about human evolution, about why her species seemed so comfortable with violence. She tried to explain that it wasn't comfort, it was necessity. Humans didn't enjoy fighting. They had simply become very good at it because survival demanded it. Across the cafeteria, Professor Kelvin sat with several other instructors. They watched Katie's table with interest. "She's dangerous," said Professor Mira, a Nelthian who taught xenobiology. "Her reaction time is beyond anything I've seen in the academy." "She's human," Kelvin replied. "Humans evolved to have some of the fastest reaction times in the known galaxy. They had to. Their world gave them no choice." "Perhaps we should not have admitted her," suggested another instructor, an elderly Corvin named Instructor Hex. "If she can defeat Zektar so easily, what happens if she loses control? What if she hurts someone?" Kelvin's 4 eyes focused on his colleague. "She had a knife to his throat," She could have killed him. Instead, she helped him up and apologized for disrupting the lesson. Does that sound like someone who lacks control? It sounds like someone who is very good at appearing harmless, Hex countered. The conversation at the instructor's table grew heated, but Katie was unaware of it. She was too busy trying to make her fellow students understand that being from a Deathworld didn't make her a monster. Later that evening, Katie returned to her dormitory. The room was small but comfortable, with a bed, a desk, and a viewport showing the stars. Her neighbor, a shy Telkhani student named Lynn, had requested a room transfer that afternoon. The housing office had approved it immediately. Katie sat on her bed and pulled out her personal datapad. She had messages from home, her mother asking how the academy was going, her younger brother wanting to know if she had met any cool aliens yet. Her father, brief as always, simply telling her to stay safe and make them proud. She typed out responses, trying to sound upbeat. She didn't mention the incident in class. She didn't mention the way other students looked at her. She just told them about the station, the food, the amazing view of space from her window. A soft chime indicated someone was at her door. Katie opened it to find Amy Chen standing in the hallway. Amy was another human, but from New Terra, a colony world that had been terraformed for 3 generations. She was classified as Category 3, barely more dangerous than a garden world. "Hi," Amy said nervously. "I heard about what happened in class." "Everyone heard," Katie replied. "Can I come in?" Katie stepped aside and Amy entered the small room. She looked around, taking in the sparse decorations. Katie hadn't brought much from Earth. "I wanted to say that I think it's cool," Amy said, sitting in the desk chair. "What you did, I mean. Zektar has been insufferable all term. Someone needed to knock him down a peg." Katie sat on the bed. "I wasn't trying to embarrass him. He asked for a practical demonstration." "I know, but still." Amy hesitated, then continued. "It must be weird for you. Being here, I mean. I grew up on a safe world. We have parks and cities, and the most dangerous thing is rush hour traffic. But Earth is real. It's raw. It's what humanity actually is." "Earth is one version of humanity," Katie said. "New Terra is another. Neither is more real than the other." "Maybe. But when I saw you move today, I realized something. I'm human by genetics, but you're human by experience. You've actually lived what our species evolved for." Katie didn't know how to respond to that. Amy wasn't wrong exactly. Humans from colony worlds were softer, gentler, more like the other peaceful species in the galaxy. But that didn't make them less human. "Do you ever wish you grew up somewhere safer?" Amy asked. Katie thought about it. "Sometimes. But Earth made me who I am. Without it, I'd be someone else entirely." They talked for another hour about their different experiences of being human. Amy described a childhood of schools and shopping centers and family vacations to beach resorts that were actually safe. Katie described learning to swim in oceans with riptides and sharks, hiking through forests where plants could poison you with a touch, and understanding from a young age that nature didn't care if you lived or died. After Amy left, Katie stood by her viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, hidden among billions of worlds, was a blue and green planet that most species considered a nightmare. But to her it was home. Her datapad chimed again. This time it was a message from Professor Kelvin. He wanted to see her in his office tomorrow morning before class. Katie stared at the message, wondering if she was in trouble. She had followed the rules, accepted the challenge that Zektar implied, and stopped the moment the demonstration was over. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe she had shown too much. Maybe the Academy was realizing that having a human from Earth was more complicated than they had anticipated. Katie set the datapad aside and prepared for sleep. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. That was another lesson from Earth. You can't control everything, so focus on what you can control. Right now, that meant getting rest and being ready for whatever came next. Outside her window, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the concerns of one human girl trying to find her place in a galaxy that didn't quite know what to make of her kind. Professor Kelvin's office was filled with artifacts from 100 different worlds. Weapons, art pieces, historical documents preserved in stasis fields. Each item told a story of conflict, resolution, or both. Katie stood in the center of the room, waiting as the professor reviewed something on his datapad. "Do you know what this is?" Kelvin finally asked, gesturing to a curved blade mounted on the wall. Katie studied it. "Looks like a ceremonial sword. Maybe Kryn? The balance seems off for actual combat. Correct. It was given to me by a Kryn general after I helped negotiate peace between his people and the Theln Confederacy. It represents honor, tradition, and the willingness to set aside violence for a greater purpose. He turned his 4 eyes toward her. Zektar's blade was similar, ceremonial, beautiful, and practically useless in real combat. I didn't mean to insult his culture, Katie said quickly. Kelvin raised one long finger. I am not reprimanding you. In fact, I wanted to discuss what happened yesterday because I believe you provided the class with an invaluable lesson. Katie relaxed slightly but remained standing. The professor gestured to a chair, and she sat. He moved to the window, his silver skin reflecting the light from the distant stars. I have taught combat theory for 30 years, he said. I have studied warfare from 200 different species. I have read thousands of historical accounts, tactical analyses, and strategic documents. But yesterday I watched you do something that 3 decades of study did not prepare me for. You didn't just defeat Zektar. You did it in a way that made our entire curriculum seem inadequate. Professor, He held up his hand. Please let me finish. I reviewed the footage 73 times last night. Even at reduced speed, your movements are difficult to track. You didn't hesitate. You didn't telegraph your intentions. You simply acted. The entire confrontation lasted 3 seconds, Katie nodded. That's about right. 3 seconds, Kelvin repeated. Do you know how long the average combat engagement lasts in our simulations? No, sir. 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Our students train to assess, plan, execute, and adapt. They learn to read their opponent, look for openings, wait for the right moment. You ignored all of that. Because in real combat you don't have 2 minutes, Katie said quietly. You have the time it takes for someone to close the distance and hurt you. If you're lucky, that's a few seconds. If you're not, it's less. Kelvin turned from the window. Explain to me how you learned this. Your file says you attended a standard human education facility on Earth. Katie leaned back in her chair. I did. But Earth education includes mandatory survival training. We start learning at age 5. Basic awareness, how to identify dangerous plants and animals, what to do in natural disasters. By age 10, we're learning self-defense, not sport fighting, real self-defense. How to escape holds, how to fight off attackers, how to use improvised weapons. At age 10, Kelvin's voice carried disbelief. At age 10, Earth kids are old enough to wander away from adults. That means they're old enough to face danger alone. So yes, we learn early. Katie paused. I also trained extra. My dad was military and he made sure I knew more than just the basics. He said the galaxy was a dangerous place and humans needed to be ready. Your father was wise. The galaxy can indeed be dangerous. Kelvin sat at his desk. But here is my concern, and the concern of the Academy administration. You demonstrated a level of combat efficiency that most species find disturbing. Several students have expressed fear. Some parents have contacted us demanding you be removed from the Academy. Katie's stomach sank. I see. However, Kelvin continued, an equal number of students have requested to transfer into my class. They want to learn what you know. They want to understand how humans fight. The Galactic Council itself has sent an inquiry, asking for detailed reports on your capabilities. What do you want me to do? Katie asked. I want you to teach. Katie blinked. I'm sorry, what? Kelvin pulled up a holographic display. It showed footage of the confrontation, frozen at the moment Katie's hand redirected Zektar's strike. This moment here. This is not random. This is technique. Centuries of human combat evolution, compressed into a single motion. You struck his wrist at the exact point where nerve clusters converge. How did you know where to strike? Humans have the same anatomy there. I assumed it would be similar. But Kryn physiology is significantly different from humans. Your assumption should have been wrong. Yet it worked perfectly. Kelvin zoomed in on the image. I believe you didn't consciously know. I believe your instincts guided you to strike where defenses were weakest. Am I correct? Katie thought about it. She hadn't planned the strike. She had just seen the opening and reacted. I guess so. This is what I want you to teach. Not the specific techniques, but the mindset. Our students learn combat as an intellectual exercise. They study it like mathematics or history, but you understand it as survival. That difference matters when you're a professor. I'm not qualified to teach. I'm just a student myself. You are a human from Earth. That makes you more qualified than anyone else on this station to teach practical combat. Kelvin deactivated the hologram. I am proposing a new module for my class. You would assist me, demonstrating real-world applications of the theories we discuss. You would help students understand the difference between ceremonial combat and actual survival fighting. Katie felt overwhelmed. Can I think about it? Of course, but I need an answer by tomorrow. The council is watching, Katie. How you proceed from here will impact not just your own future, but potentially humanity's relationship with the rest of the galaxy. She left his office with her mind spinning. The corridors of Nexus Prime suddenly felt different, like the walls were closing in. She needed space, needed to think. The station had recreational areas, including a gymnasium that could be configured for different species' needs. Katie made her way there, hoping to find it empty. She was in luck. The vast room was deserted, its floor set to standard gravity and atmosphere. She began her routine. Push-ups, sit-ups running in place. Then she moved to forms, practicing the movements her father had taught her.
Strike, block, pivot, strike again.
Her body moved through patterns ingrained by thousands of hours of practice. Your form is beautiful. Katie spun, dropping into a defensive stance before recognizing the voice. Zektar stood near the entrance watching her. Sorry, she said, straightening. Reflex, do not apologize. A warrior should always be ready. He walked closer, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. I came to thank you. Thank me? For the lesson. I have been arrogant. I thought my training made me superior, but yesterday you showed me the difference between practice and reality. You humbled me, but you did so with honor. You could have hurt me, but you chose not to. That is the mark of a true warrior. Katie didn't know what to say. She had expected anger, resentment, maybe even a challenge for a rematch. Not gratitude. My people value strength, Zektar continued. But strength without wisdom is meaningless. I see that now. You are strong, but you also showed restraint. Mercy, these are qualities I must develop. You're a good fighter, Katie said. Your form was solid. On most worlds, against most opponents, you would win. But not against you. Not against someone who fights to survive rather than fights to win. Those are different things. Zektar's crest rose thoughtfully. Explain this difference. Katie sat down on a nearby bench and Zektar joined her. When you fight to win, you're thinking about victory. About technique, about impressing others, about honor. But when you fight to survive, none of that matters. You're thinking about going home. About living another day. About making sure the threat never gets a chance to hurt you or anyone you care about. So survival fighting is more desperate? Not desperate, focused. Every movement has a purpose. You don't waste energy on looking good or following forms. You do what works, she paused. Look, I'm not saying tournament fighting is worthless. It builds skill, discipline, confidence. But it's not the same as facing real danger. Zektar absorbed this. On my world, we have a saying. The warrior who has never bled has never truly fought. Perhaps I have never truly fought. Be grateful for that, Katie said. Real fighting is terrible. People get hurt. Sometimes they die. It's not glorious or exciting. It's scary and painful and something you do only when you have no other choice. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Zektar spoke again. Will you teach me? Not to fight like a Kryn, but to fight like a human? Katie looked at him surprised. Professor Kelvin wants me to assist in class. If I agree, you'll learn along with everyone else. I hope you agree. We need this knowledge. I need this knowledge. He stood, towering over her. Thank you again, Katie Morrison. You have given me a gift, even if it came wrapped in humiliation. After he left, Katie continued her routine, but her mind was elsewhere. Kelvin wanted her to teach. Zektar wanted to learn. The academy was watching. The council was interested. Everything was getting complicated. She thought about her father's words before she left Earth. You're going out there as a representative of humanity. Show them we're not monsters. Show them we're more than our Deathworld reputation. Maybe teaching was how she could do that. Maybe by showing them how humans fought, she could also show them why humans fought. Context. The cafeteria was more crowded than usual. Katie noticed immediately as she entered with her tray. Students clustered in groups, their conversations stopping when she passed. Some stared openly. Others pretended not to notice her but shifted their bodies to maintain distance. She spotted Amy sitting alone near the observation window and made her way over. Is it always this bad? Katie asked, setting down her tray. Amy looked up from her meal. It's gotten worse. People are talking. Some are fascinated, some are scared, and some are angry. Angry? There's a petition going around. Some students want you expelled. They say you're too dangerous to be here. Amy lowered her voice. I also heard that 3 other students withdrew from the academy entirely. Their parents pulled them out. Katie felt sick. She had come here to learn, to prove that humans could integrate with galactic society. Instead, she was driving people away. But it's not all bad, Amy added quickly. Professor Kelvin's combat theory class is now the most requested course on the station. Students are trying to transfer in. Some professors are even asking if they can audit the lectures. Great, so I'm either the monster or the attraction. You're the unknown. That's scarier to most species than anything else. Amy pushed some food around her plate. I've been reading about Earth. Did you know that most species consider pain tolerance and fear response to be inverse? The more pain you can tolerate, the less you fear. But humans are different. We can tolerate enormous pain and still feel tremendous fear. What's your point? My point is that you're not fearless. You're brave. There's a difference, and most species don't understand that. Amy leaned forward. They see you take down Zektar and they think you don't feel fear. But you do. You just act despite it. That's what makes you dangerous and inspiring at the same time. Before Katie could respond, a shadow fell across their table. She looked up to see 3 students standing there. One was a Velthian crystalline body refracting light. The other 2 were species Katie didn't recognize, one covered in scales, the other with skin that shifted colors. You're the human, the scaled one said. It wasn't a question. I'm a human, Katie replied. There are 2 of us on the station. The dangerous one, I mean. Amy started to object, but Katie put a hand on her arm. What can I do for you? The Velthians spoke, their voice musical. We want to understand. How can you be so violent and yet claim to be peaceful? Katie set down her fork. I'm not violent. I'm capable of violence. Those are different things. You nearly killed Zektar, the color-shifting student accused. If I wanted to kill him, he'd be dead. I demonstrated a technique. I proved a point. Then I helped him up and apologized for disrupting class. Katie met each of their eyes in turn. Violence is the choice to hurt someone. Capability is the ability to hurt someone. I have the capability, but I don't make the choice unless I have no other option. But you must want to use that capability, the scaled student pressed. Why else would you train so much? Katie thought about how to explain it. When you lock your door at night, does that mean you want someone to break in? No, it means you're prepared in case someone tries. I train not because I want to fight, but because I want to survive if I have to fight. The students looked at each other, uncertain. The Velthian spoke again. On my world, we resolved conflict through meditation and understanding. We evolved past physical confrontation 10,000 years ago. Why haven't humans? Because our world won't let us, Katie said simply. Earth doesn't care about meditation. Hurricanes don't stop because you found inner peace. Predators don't pause while you negotiate. We evolved to handle those threats, and that evolution is coded into our bodies and minds. So you're slaves to your biology? The color shifter asked. We're influenced by it like everyone else, but we can choose how we use it. Katie stood up, matching their standing postures. I could have hurt Zektar badly. I chose not to. That's not being a slave to biology. That's having control over it. The 3 students didn't seem satisfied, but they nodded and walked away. Katie sat back down, her appetite gone. This is what it's going to be like, isn't it? She said quietly. People afraid of me, demanding I justify my existence. Amy reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Some people, yes, but not everyone. And for what it's worth, I think you're handling it better than I would. The afternoon brought Katie's first session assisting Professor Kelvin. She arrived at the classroom early to find it packed. Every seat was filled and students stood along the walls. She recognized some from other classes. Others were complete strangers. Professor Kelvin stood at the front, his 4 eyes scanning the crowd. It seems word has spread. Welcome to all our new attendees. Please note that this class maintains strict protocols regarding safety and respect. Katie moved to stand beside him, feeling dozens of eyes tracking her movement. Today, Kelvin continued, we will discuss the practical applications of theoretical combat training. I have asked Katie Morrison to assist in demonstrating concepts. But first I want to establish context. Katie, please tell the class about your training history. Katie had prepared for this. I started basic survival training at age 5, standard for Earth children. Self-defense training began at 10. From 12 to 18, I studied multiple martial arts, competed in tournaments, and trained with my father, who was military. I've never been in actual combat. I've never hurt anyone outside of controlled training. My goal in learning these skills was personal safety, not aggression. A student raised their hand, a Porthan with gray fur. But you defeated Zektar easily. Doesn't that prove you're trained for combat? I'm trained for survival. Combat implies mutual agreement to fight. What I demonstrated was threat neutralization. Katie gestured to the space where she had faced Zektar. He approached with a weapon. I neutralized that threat in the fastest, most efficient way possible. Then I stopped. That's the difference. Professor Kelvin activated a holographic display. Let's examine the engagement frame by frame. The recording played slowly. Katie watched herself move, seeing it from outside perspectives for the first time. It was strange seeing her body react with speeds that seemed impossible even to her own eyes. Notice here. Kelvin pointed to the moment of contact. Katie doesn't block the strike. Blocking requires meeting force with force. Instead, she redirects it, adding a slight vector change that sends Zektar's momentum into empty space. This is a fundamental principle in several Earth martial arts. Why not just block? Someone asked. Katie answered. Because Zektar is bigger and stronger than me. If I tried to block directly, he'd power through. By redirecting, I use his strength against him. The bigger and stronger he is, the more effective the technique becomes. The class continued with Kelvin analyzing each moment of the confrontation. He discussed timing, positioning, threat assessment, and escalation control. Katie demonstrated techniques in slow motion, showing how small adjustments in angle or pressure could change outcomes dramatically. May I try? A voice called out. Katie looked up to see Zektar standing. His crest was neutral, his posture respectful. What do you want to try? Kelvin asked. I want to face Katie again. But this time I want to learn rather than win. Kelvin looked at Katie, who nodded. They moved to the center of the room and the safety field activated. Attack me the same way as before, Katie instructed. But this time I'll move slower so you can see what I'm doing. Zektar lunged with his blade. Katie's hand came up, but this time at quarter speed. She narrated as she moved. I'm targeting the nerve cluster on your wrist. See how I'm not punching but striking with fingertips? Less force needed, more precise. Now I'm using your momentum to turn you. Your own movement does most of the work. Finally, the leg sweep. I'm not kicking you down. I'm removing the support your momentum needs to stay upright. They repeated the sequence 5 times, each iteration slightly faster. By the end, Zektar was beginning to understand the principles involved. Other students wanted to try. Katie spent the rest of the class working with different species, adapting techniques to account for varied anatomies. She found that the core principles worked regardless of body type. Redirect force, use momentum, target weak points, control the engagement. After class, students lingered, asking questions. Katie answered as best she could, trying to emphasize that these techniques were last resorts, not first choices. Finally, the room cleared except for Katie, Kelvin, and Amy, who had waited by the door. That went well, Kelvin said. Better than I hoped. They're still afraid of me, Katie replied. Fear and respect often look similar from certain angles. Give them time to understand the difference. The professor gathered his materials. I have a meeting with the administration. They want a full report on today's session. I suspect the council will want one as well. After he left, Amy approached. You're really good at teaching. You made it seem simple. It is simple in concept. The execution is what takes practice. Katie stretched, feeling the day's tension in her shoulders. Want to grab dinner? Can't. I have a study group for xenobiology. Amy paused at the door. But Katie, what you're doing matters. Those students came in afraid and curious. They left still curious but less afraid. That's progress. Alone in the classroom, Katie looked at the space where she had. 3 weeks had passed since Katie began assisting Professor Kelvin. The classroom dynamics had shifted dramatically. Students no longer flinched when she walked by. Some even greeted her warmly in the corridors. But Katie knew the real test was coming. The Galactic Council had announced an official evaluation. Representatives from 12 major civilizations would observe a special session of the combat theory class. Based on what they saw, they would determine whether humans from Earth posed a risk to galactic peace and whether restrictions should be placed on human integration. Katie stood in Professor Kelvin's office, reviewing the agenda for tomorrow's session. They want to see you demonstrate combat effectiveness, Kelvin explained. But more importantly, they want to understand the human mindset. They fear what they don't understand. No pressure then, Katie said, trying to keep her voice light. I have a suggestion. Kelvin pulled up a holographic file. Rather than simply demonstrating techniques, what if you showed them Earth? Help them understand the context of why humans are the way we are. Katie considered this. You mean show them the world that made us? Precisely. Let them see that human capability isn't random violence. It's an evolutionary response to environmental pressures. Context creates understanding. That evening, Katie worked late into the night, compiling footage and data about Earth. She pulled from public archives, educational databases, and her own personal collection. She wanted to show them everything. The beauty and the horror, the wonder and the danger. The world that forged humanity. Amy found her still working at 2 a.m. You should sleep, Amy said, sitting beside her. You need to be sharp tomorrow. I need to get this right. The council is deciding the future of human integration based on what happens tomorrow. Then let me help. Amy pulled up a chair. What are you trying to show them? Everything. Earth isn't just dangerous. It's complex. I need them to see that. Together, they organized the presentation. They structured it chronologically, showing Earth's development from the formation of the planet through the evolution of life, the rise of humans, and finally modern human civilization. The next morning, the classroom was arranged differently. Council representatives sat in a special observation area. The regular students filled their usual seats, but tension crackled through the air. Everyone knew this was important. Professor Kelvin called the session to order. Honored representatives, students, colleagues. Today we will explore a topic that has generated significant discussion, the nature of human capability and its place in galactic society. Katie Morrison will present context for understanding Earth humans. Katie stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. Thank you, Professor. Honored representatives, fellow students, I'd like to start by showing you something. The holographic projectors activated. Earth appeared above the classroom, rotating slowly. Beautiful blues and greens and whites. This is Earth, Katie said. Category 12 Deathworld, home to 8 billion humans. And yes, it's dangerous, but it's also home. She zoomed in on a tropical coastline. Waves crashed against white sand. Palm trees swayed in the wind. Beautiful, right? Now let me show you the same location during hurricane season. The image shifted. Massive storm systems spiraled across the ocean. Waves 50 feet tall demolished coastlines. Wind speeds exceeded 200 miles per hour. Humans living here must evacuate or shelter in specially designed structures. Every year, hurricanes kill thousands despite our technology and warning systems. This is normal. This is life. She moved to another location. Snow-capped mountains gleaming in sunlight. The Himalayas. Stunning mountain range, also deadly. The scene changed to show avalanches, freezing temperatures, and altitude sickness. Yet humans climb these mountains. Not because we must, but because they're there. We challenge our environment constantly. The presentation continued. She showed them the African savanna with its lions, elephants, and hippos. The Australian outback with its venomous snakes and spiders. The Amazon rainforest with its jaguars, poisonous frogs, and insects that carried deadly diseases. The ocean depths with sharks and jellyfish. The deserts where temperatures could kill in hours without water. Every biome on Earth contains threats, Katie explained. But humans live in all of them. We adapted. We learned. We survived. Then she showed them human evolution, early ancestors fleeing from predators, learning to use fire, developing tools, creating weapons not for conquest but for hunting and defense. Our brains grew larger because we needed to think our way out of problems we couldn't fight our way out of. Our hands developed fine motor control to make tools. Our social structures became complex because cooperation was the only way to survive. Everything about us is a response to environmental pressure. A council representative raised a tentacle. But surely modern humans no longer face these pressures. You have technology, cities, safety? Katie nodded. We do. But evolution doesn't change in a few generations. Our bodies and minds still carry the adaptations of millions of years. Let me show you what I mean. She pulled up data comparing human capabilities to other species. Reaction times, visual tracking, pattern recognition, threat assessment. Humans have some of the fastest reaction times in the galaxy, because on Earth, slow reactions mean death. We can track multiple moving objects simultaneously because we evolved hunting in groups. We see patterns everywhere because recognizing patterns meant identifying threats before they killed us. She showed footage of human children playing. Tag hide-and-seek mock fighting. Human children play games that simulate hunting and combat, not because we're violent, but because play is how we train survival instincts in a safe environment. Every species does this with skills they need to survive. Katie took a deep breath. This was the crucial part. Now let me show you something that might surprise you. She displayed statistics on human violence. Despite our capabilities, humans have been decreasing violence for centuries. Modern humans are less violent than any previous generation in our history. We have laws, ethics, and social structures specifically designed to prevent violence. She showed images of human art, music, literature. We create beauty. We write poetry. We build hospitals to heal the sick and schools to educate our children. Yes, we're capable of violence, but we're also capable of compassion, creativity, and cooperation on massive scales. A council member stood, a tall being with crystalline features. You make a compelling case for context. But the concern remains. If humans are so inherently capable of violence, what prevents them from using it? Katie had prepared for this question. The same thing that prevents any intelligent being from using their capabilities harmfully. Choice. Let me demonstrate. She gestured to Zektar, who stood and joined her in the center of the room. 3 weeks ago, I disarmed Zektar in 3 seconds. I had a blade to his throat. I could have killed him easily. But I didn't. Why not? The classroom was silent. Because I'm not a mindless weapon. I'm a person who makes choices. I choose not to hurt others unless absolutely necessary. That's not weakness. That's control. She turned to address the council directly. You fear humans because we're good at violence. But consider this. The better we are at something, the more responsibility we bear for how we use it. Earth taught us to be dangerous, but Earth also taught us the cost of violence. We know better than most species how terrible conflict truly is. Katie pulled up one final image, a human family laughing together in a park, children playing while parents watched. This is what humans fight for. Not conquest, not domination, safety for our families, peace for our children, the chance to build something better than the violent world we came from. She deactivated the display. I'm not asking you to stop seeing us as dangerous. We are dangerous, but danger isn't evil. A fire can burn down a building or cook a meal. A blade can kill or save a life during surgery. The tool isn't good or bad. It's how you use it that matters. Professor Kelvin stood. Are there questions for Katie? Dozens of hands, tentacles, and appendages raised. For the next 2 hours, Katie answered questions. About human history, about training, about ethics, about fear. She was honest about humanity's dark past, the wars and conflicts. But she also emphasized humanity's progress, the constant effort to be better than their worst instincts. Zektar spoke up during a lull. I want to say something. Before Katie came here, I thought I was a warrior. I had training, I had confidence, I had pride. She defeated me in seconds. At first I was humiliated, but then she taught me something more valuable than any technique. The Kryn warrior stood tall. She taught me that being capable of violence doesn't mean you must be violent. She had every opportunity to hurt me, to embarrass me further, to assert dominance. Instead, she helped me understand my weaknesses and taught me to be better. That is true strength, several other students spoke, sharing their experiences, learning from Katie. Amy talked about the difference between humans, from safe colony worlds and those from Earth. Others discussed how understanding human context had changed their perspective. Finally, the council representatives withdrew to deliberate. Students left for their next classes, but Katie remained with Professor Kelvin. You did well, he said quietly. Whatever they decide, you represented your species with honor.